Dudes to Dads is a podcast to help men understand and navigate the transition of being a single dude into a family man. How do we make sense of it all? Well, we probably won't be able to, but let's go ahead and have some fun trying. And we are back.
We're back.
I'm Jason Kreidman.
I'm Alan Bush.
And this is Dudes to Dads. Alan, how are you?
Great.
Yeah?
Yeah, great week. A little tired today, but I'm going to get some more energy while we're here.
Well, I think there's probably somebody here who can give you a little bit more energy.
Yes, feeding me energy already.
He is, absolutely. So I want to introduce live in the studio. Well, we're not live. We're recorded, but it's the idea of somebody's in the studio versus doing it by phone. We get a lot of requests actually for like phone and Skype, which is cool and that's okay. But there's something about having people and guests and experts in our studio. Yeah. It is really, really enjoyable. For sure. Because you get to personally interact and do that. So
something about being in somebody's presence that's special.
Hey!
There we go.
Look, you can hear the voice.
Segue.
We'll have to introduce him now. Our guest today is Johnny Blackburn. And I'm going to read a little bit of an intro, and then I can add my own 2 cents to it. So Johnny is a professional development coach and group facilitator. His original background is in management consulting. And then he went back to his master's in psychology, and he's been coaching individuals for the last 9 years. He's a certified professional coach with the International Coaching Federation. He also works in the trenches facilitating dudes in men's groups for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
So
the first dude of the show.
Well, here's the thing. So, and also his website is johnnyblackburn.net, and we'll also post that on the page so you guys can follow there if you can't spell it, but I'm sure everybody can spell that.
Like it sounds, right?
Yeah, so one of the things that really attracted me to Johnny and his work is that idea that working specifically with men and men's groups and all kinds of personal development around that for the professional coaching and the groups themselves about how to be a better man, essentially. And so I had met Johnny and I said, hey, I've got to get you in. I think this is a great topic for dads, especially because there's a lot of dads maybe going through the motions, if you will.
Right.
And so one of the topics and one of the core topics that Johnny deals with is presence and being present.
Yeah.
So I thought that would be a great topic for today. And so Johnny, just want to first say hello. You can welcome everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, so I want to get, pretty much dive into it. How did you get started in the work that you're doing, and then more specifically sort of focusing on men and doing that work?
The original start was being floor-ridden, having a back injury, and then kind of that not getting better, and I opted for the surgery, and the surgery failed in my young 20s miserably, and so I was at the worst point 5 months, completely floor-ridden 22 hours a day. I could only stand up for about 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And really life-changing kind of experience you can imagine.
And you were a consultant at the time, or what were you doing when that happened? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're sort of in the business world, professional.
They called me Caddyshack. It was in the cube section, and then you look down the whole row, and there's all these cubes, and then there's a head popping up.
Exactly.
Because after the injury, I had to stand for a whole year, and I was doing physical therapy.
Gotcha.
And I was really trying, and there's just not really the way. I didn't want to continue that.
Yeah, for sure.
And but anyway, so the surgery really failed, but now it ended up being a blessing. But so for a couple of years, I was kind of like victim, just waiting for drugs and surgery to fix me. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up meeting a man who kind of inspired me to kind of take my own situation and health into my own hands, and that was a fortuitous moment where I just really started. Then from that point on, spent 2 years. Overall, it was 4 years. So I spent the next 2 years, just strengthening, stretching, getting into yoga and different stretching.
So both physical and mental. Really.
Physical, mental, emotional. Just really try. I was kind of like trying everything and anything to see what would work and learn about my body and learn how things work. I think in essence, there's a part of me that's really practical and curious about life and how things work, and kind of likes, if you guys are familiar with the term hacking.
But how would you explain?
There's a lot of hacks, right?
Like cheats? Like cheat?
Yeah, like finding the
shortcuts.
shortcuts, finding the loopholes, and then also the best practices. So I think in the information age, we're not short of information. but what we really need are the synthesizers that are able to integrate it and put it all together.
Right.
Okay.
That's a good way of phrasing it.
So how did you start then? You went from this, you probably did a little bit of training, or how did you then?
Well, yeah. So after this period of like full, it's progressive, but there was a certain point where I was
Right.
completely, back to normal, and frankly better than, I played sports in high school. It was like, better body than I did after.
Right.
All the cool stuff that I learned. And, so I wanted to kind of contribute this and share this with other people. So I went back, got a master's in psychology. But I didn't want to just do, that was a point where I was like, do I finish and do my PhD?
So what age were you
in
at this
psychology?
point?
Young 20s.
Young 20s, okay.
And I decided with this practicality part, like I went did a coach training for a year and a half. Because I think there's a little bit, it kind of integrates the best, but with coaching, there's a bit of more action and kind of future orientation and practical orientation in our life. And I think, our generation is a little, responds a little more receptively to that.
Yeah, yeah.
More common with work with coaches and stuff. A lot of my friends, will work.
It feels a little less serious.
Yeah, right.
Too.
Yeah. So it's kind of optimizing your life.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And so you started this. How did you go from then, going into the coaching world and saying, okay, now I'm going to maybe focus a little bit more on men and men's groups and developing men further, if you will?
To a previous point I want to make, though, is just like, there's again this consummate part that is curious and interested in practical application and really studying what works.
Right.
So when I say in the trenches, when you're really getting curious with people, oh, that's not working, that works. Let's study the experts, and so that people read the book Be Here Now. Or The Power of Now, and for some people they pick this up and they read it for a little bit and there's a nice little state change experience, but how do we apply presence to our lives, and in the context of being a father and sustain it, in the context of work, with our partner, when we're triggered,
right?
When we're stressed, these are really the moments.
So that struck you as one of the chords of wow, you sort of began maybe the word mastering it, but really understanding it and developing it and saying, hey, maybe I should share this with other people. Is that kind of how it evolved? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I started to, there was a sense of this being kind of the X factor that for kind of our best self. Mm-hmm. That when we, and I think about it when you're like an athlete, when they're rested, when they're nourished, when they've been training and preparing, they're kind of they're resourced to play their game. Many of us probably remember Jordan in the NBA Finals there with the Portland Trailblazers, 35, I think he had 5 3-pointers and scored 30-something points in the first. Right, and he's walking down he's running down the half court after that last 3-pointer, and he just kind of shrugs,
right?
And then
it was no big deal.
They call this the zone,
right?
No big deal, or that sense of he didn't know how to explain it,
right.
Yeah. And I think we all have these tastes of our best states.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're also human, and we have our moments where we're not in our best
states.
And yet, I think talking to many women, just friends and clients and reading, I would say that the thing that women most want from men, the single thing they most want, is their presence, their attention.
Ah, that's a good tip.
Right. Yeah, right.
Write that one down.
Yeah, exactly right.
Well, it was funny. So prior to this interview, which 2 hours ago or an hour ago, we had our meetup, and I actually brought up that topic of presence. So we were discussing it with a couple of the guys, and so obviously one of the biggest areas where we talked about that was the relationship, and actually even it goes into intimacy and those kinds of things, where being present is pretty much the most powerful thing out of all of it. When your wife or significant other feels that presence, like you said, that's when it's really working.
Right.
And I would imagine it's the same thing for your children. I mean, when your children understand and feel that you are present, that's the most powerful thing. So it doesn't become, and we talked about this, it doesn't become the quantity of time, it's the quality of the time. And presence is the major factor of that quality.
Well, and also to clarify, and I'm hoping I'm right in this, not just physical presence, meaning that, I'm physically here, deal with it. It's more about
It's the emotional.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm with you, and I'm understanding, and I'm empathizing and sympathizing with what you're saying with me. It's not just saying, all right, I'm here. Like,
Well, that's a good question. How do you define presence? Like, what is presence in your capacity?
I'd say it has three faces. One is kind of the physical piece of like really feeling in our body.
Mhm.
Usually bodily awareness or breath are kind of entry points to that.
Mhm.
The second one is there's an intimate quality to it, where we're actually feeling connected. So you made the point of like our partner, spouse, wife, like wants to feel our presence, right?
Mhm.
So there's a way in which like be present is a concept that's mental, but in a felt sense, yeah, there is a quality where we can actually feel if somebody's present. And I'd say the third quality of presence is, the third face of it's awareness.
Okay.
So embodiment, connection, and awareness.
And in doing this, why do you feel like it's so important? I mean, obviously it's somewhat obvious because I just said it's like one of the most important things. But for you, does it? It seems to just resonate in all different areas of our life. It's like it
100%.
doesn't matter what area of your life, being present essentially can improve all of them.
100%.
Yeah.
In work, executive presence is the hot topic in corporations.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had clients come to me and they're like, they had their annual review, and they said their boss told them that they need to work on their presence, and they asked the boss what this is, and the boss didn't even know.
But it was on the checklist,
Right?
Yeah, right.
And so there's this, it's so nebulous, and so
Yeah.
that's why that's another curiosity of like, well, how do we really quantify it? And I think stars, like there's a sense of an athlete being in the zone, or a star on, or a speaker on stage, like there's a palpable presence that they have in the room, right? Same thing when a leader walks into the room, there's a felt sense of embodied presence. And then also, in those epic moments of lovemaking, like there's a quality of presence with our wife or lover, and the same thing maybe with a caregiver, or a great mother, or a nurse really has a soothing, nurturing presence. So this is the intimate quality of presence. And the third quality is like more kind of a spiritual teacher perspective, like what Eckhart Tolle points to, like this power of
Right.
love. So my curiosity was like, well, there's got to be a common thread of all of these three things.
That makes sense. Absolutely. And I mean, you touched on work, and I think that's probably an area where people, I think, as a father and family guy, the work that you do is so important. That's how often we define ourselves, is by the work that we do and how our income and all that. What do you do to improve the presence at work? I know we're going to touch on some things later in general, but specifically for people listening, I don't think presence at work is thought of very much. At least that does. I think of maybe focus and some of those kinds of words. Yeah, and they're related, but I guess the idea of being present, because you feel like, well, I'm at work. I'm answering the phone. I'm responding to my emails. What other presence do I have?
And the Towers Watson International study last year, like 13% of the global workforce is like engaged in their work.
Oh wow!
So I think that's a marker of presence, like how
Lack of
engaged
it.
am I?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll just say preemptively, it underlies focus, it underlies productivity. There's a clarity and prioritization that you need presence to be able to be clear on what your priorities are and what's higher leverage things. There's elements of it in leadership, in clarity of communication with your coworkers, and then that intangible, again, that executive presence, like the way that you carry yourself and move in a room.
Right.
So presence, whether you're an entrepreneur or in an organization, presence is the X factor.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the thing: is like I think as a dad, or let's even expand it as a male, we have a tendency to be more dude-like. Let's call it dude-like, where I think maybe more empty, more free, kind of a little bit more, or we like less constraint, if that's a better way of saying it. How do you relate that to presence? Because it's sort of the opposite of what most males are, in a sense, because we have so many things going on, our minds going in all different directions. It's not natural, I think, for many people in our state. So obviously, one of the most important things is like, how can we be more present? Like, it's just that's, I guess, the overriding question. It's like, what can we do to be more present? In the meetup that we just had, we talked about a lot of the causes of not having presence. So I'll give an example, which you know, Alan, that I love to rant about phones.
Sure, yeah.
It's simply just telephones, our mobile phones, and how much that keeps us from being present.
Yeah.
You know, whether that is a parent on the playground who their child is playing and they're simply, you know, in their phone,
Yeah.
or it's a family at a dinner and one of the people or many of the people are in their phone. That in itself, it seems like, has increased the lack of presence tremendously. Do you see that as well? I mean, is that...
Totally.
Like, I want to throw the phone out the window. I mean, for you, who works in this area, you have to just put restraints and, like,
And it's
limits on it.
It's a huge thing amongst the teen population. Like, I mean, we're almost creating hybrids where they're not going to know how to, like, actually talk and make eye contact. They're just going to text each other.
Yeah, like text each, well, they're right next to each other.
Right?
Text you.
Don't you see this?
Yeah,
Like, I
I've
see
seen
So we
that.
found someone who agrees with us.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
for
Like,
sure. No, but it is so prevalent. Like, there was a funny moment where I was in a bus with somebody, and they wanted to talk about somebody that was in the bus as well. So they texted me their message because they didn't want to
that
say it out
works.
loud. But that was
works.
kind of
That's
funny.
appropriate.
But that was
Yeah.
appropriate. He didn't want to be a He said, check out this guy. Blah, blah, blah. But aside from that, I've seen that happen where someone's basically texted somebody that's right next to them.
Yeah.
And like, or I remember being at work. And he's a younger guy, and he called. It was a cubicle, that kind of kitty corner from on the other side, and he called me, and I said, "Dude, just come around, man. I'm around the corner.
That's
I'm right. I
crazy,
can hear
right?
you talking to me while talking to me."
I mean,
It's
remember when we
ridiculous.
were kids, you just show up at your buddy's house,
Yeah.
right? Like, hey, what's up, man? What are you doing?
Right.
Like, now
That-
if you did that without texting, like, what are you doing?
This happened to me this week, and this is very relevant to what happened this week. And a buddy of mine and his wife just dropped by, and at first I'm like. I was almost like offended in a weird way. I'm like, "Hey,
Why didn't you text me?"
Why didn't you text me? You could have texted me. I would have came. But I'm like, you know what? I wasn't doing anything. I'm just sitting there. I'm not in my boxers. It's not inappropriate. Just
Right.
why not?
Right.
That was, and like you said, back in the day, I remember when we were kids. I just, hey, someone's home. Yeah, all right, come on in. You
So
know?
when you are coaching people, is that a factor of something where that you put on limits and say, okay, when you get home from work, put away the phone?
I think that's a great. I definitely want to answer that one. But to the previous question, there's 3 questions you can ask. Can I feel my body? Do I feel connected to you, or the other? Right. And
So it's a question whether you are connected or not.
Yeah. So
okay.
so little checks.
Got
Like,
it.
can I feel my body? Do I feel my feet on the ground, my breath, my whole body? Do I feel connected to the person or the group that I'm with? And the third thing is, like, am I aware of my surroundings?
Okay.
So those are, again, the 3 markers.
You have to
So
remind
what does
yourself.
it mean to be present,
Right.
right? But like, well, those are really 3 quick checks.
Yeah,
Okay.
very tangible reminders of yourself.
Totally.
Yeah.
They bring you sort of back in. I could totally see that. Even just the feeling part, like you said, can I feel my feet on the ground?
Yeah.
Like that in itself, or like, can I feel my shoulders?
Yeah.
What is my body doing
Yeah.
right now?
Yeah.
And that's a very
No,
easy
and I just to kind of expand on that point, it is a simple thing, but it is something you're not aware of all the time. You take it for granted
Yeah.
because you're you, and so you think you're here in your own head most of the time. So
That's
when you remind yourself that your feet are on the ground,
That's the
then you're like,
thing.
oh, now I'm really here.
That's the
I'm
thing.
not somewhere in the ether.
And what we know from the latest research, latest brain science on mindfulness is it starts in the body. So what they call proprioceptive, basically in simple terms, the more you can sense and feel your body, the quieter your mind is.
Mhm.
Now, in conversation, the quieter our mind is, the more we're available to listen and, quote, be present.
Right.
So that's why, different people have different ways in, as I said, the body or connection or awareness. But I think you gotta, whether you have one preferred way in, you still gotta make sure you got all of them. Because somebody might be really good, they might be in, ex-athlete, workout martial artist, and so they're really body aware. But then they might not do the connection thing,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So it's not just one of them; it's more than one.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, there was a lot of causes. I mean, like you said, the big one too. This I'm totally guilty of this. But I'll admit it. Is when people are talking, you are thinking of a response
Yeah.
instead of listening.
Right.
And I'm a conversation hijacker all the time, so I'm well aware of that, and I work to try to not do that. But if you're thinking of a response or thinking how you can add to the conversation, you're not really listening.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
You
you're
know?
not absorbing it.
There's
And
not
that's
enough
hard.
space.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you just now in the interview, because I'm interviewing or I'm part of the process, I really want to try to listen, but I have to think about what else I'm trying to say. You know what I'm saying? Like,
So
I'm
you're
just
like 2
talking.
steps
I'm
ahead.
talking in real time right now, but that's totally like I want to be present because I'm really interested in what he's saying.
Right.
But at the same time, that's difficult because I have to think about what I'm saying next.
Right.
So there are times where it's really, really hard to do that.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
common.
Yeah.
And to your first question, I'll vulnerably reveal another way that I came about all this stuff is like real life feedback.
Mm.
I had a good buddy, Nick, that he's like, Johnny, man, every time we talk, it's like I can't get a word in. It's like you're finishing my sentence, you should talk over me, just like,
Yeah.
he was really present when he delivered that feedback, and I could tell that he cared, and cared about me and cared about, just,
Yeah.
as bros. And so it kind of landed, and I really thought about this, and so I started practicing, just taking a breath when somebody was talking.
Mm.
And so all these things I've, in the trenches, learned on my own.
Right.
Another story is in the connection piece, most of my life I was afraid of being judged.
Mm.
And I really wasn't so good with eye contact. And, kind of, as I realize now deep down, if somebody couldn't see inside me, then there was nothing they could
Got
judge,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Or criticize. And I remember I was having this conversation with a woman, Rachel, and I was probably talking pretty fast, and my eyes were darting, to and fro. And I remember, that scene in Braveheart where it's like the prima nocta, but the wife comes up and she just so lovingly grabs his face and brings it into connection and
Right.
calms him down. It's like a beautiful scene, This woman did this, and it felt like I locked in, wow, I feel my feet on the ground and I could relax into my body.
Yeah.
And for the first time, I really registered, wow, I feel connected to her. And it was only a couple seconds.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But I was like, wow, I've gone my whole life and that's what connection feels like,
Yeah.
Right. Right.
and normal guy, friends, party, and family,
Yeah.
active lifestyle. But
But people feel different about you when they're around you now,
That's right.
based on your presence. I mean, I can tell even just when I've spent some time with you and feeling like, wow, he's really listening to what I'm saying. Like he's here, Whereas a lot of people are not like that.
Yeah.
It's so true. And allowing you, it's the same thing on a date where, the person who's talking all the time goes, gosh, I had a great time.
Yeah.
Because the other person was listening, and they're like, wow, that person's a great, I really enjoyed her company because I got to talk the whole
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Kind of that same manner. But it is hard, especially when you've conditioned yourself over so long, because I can tell you that is something I struggle with. Whether it's our spouse talking, and I already want to respond before she finishes her sentence,
Right.
or friends.
Yeah.
It's something, and it's not a negative that you're trying to either help or just contribute to the conversation or whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But you got to take a step back and sort of slow down a little bit, which is hard on this podcast.
Right.
You got to fill time,
Yeah.
I got to keep going.
Right.
No, so that's really cool. I have so much stuff to think about right now.
No, and that's interesting because on the flip side of it, not so much the flip side, but I had the same problem in terms of eye contact because I was shy and reserved, which is another form of self-centered thinking. You're thinking everyone's judging you, so I just wouldn't look people in the eye until I realized I was doing that. I was only late teens, and I was like, I kind of forced myself to look people directly in the eye. It almost got creepy. But that being said, it kind of taught me to kind of engage with them, and then I became less and less afraid of people judging me. And now, ironically, I'm teaching classes and looking people in the eye, and they're almost scared of me, And I'm realizing that, but I'm like, no, it's okay to talk to me, but I've changed my personality based off that one trait that I realized was the main source. I was not engaging with people.
I love that story.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great inspiration and a realism for the audience, is that, presence again can seem so nebulous, or, these people can do it, but I think the way that we really learn is, like you described, is first there's the awareness and then the decision of I'd like to practice that, and it's just this little micro incremental changes that over time
Right.
really wire into our nervous system completely new ways of being.
Yeah.
Well, someone mentioned as it relates to kids, as an example, is and for the audience is, when you come home from work, say that's what you do, you come home instead of working out of the house or something, is actually like putting your stuff down and then getting down to the kids' level. That's something that a lot of some of the guys in the meetup were talking about, is that's a way that they feel like they're being present, is actually when they kneel down to the height of their children. It's kind of like saying, hey, I'm there. Like, I'm right here. I'm looking you in the eye. And it was the opposite was funny. We were saying how many times when you're about to discipline, or you think that you're upset with your children, you're like, look me in the eye. Why and that's an important thing as an adult, that we want the person to look in our eyes, but yet we're not doing necessarily the same thing. We're looking down on them, or we're looking over, or we're busy. And so that idea as a parent to be, maybe that's a perfect tip for our audience, within the next couple days, is when your child, if it's not something that you do, is actually just kneel down and talk to them. Get down to their level. And that immediately, that's a physical part. It's, you're going to feel that. I think you're going to feel that connection. And I will occasionally do that, but I think I can definitely do that more, where you're talking like that.
Right.
I think this is such a rich little area, and I think one that's most related to dudes to dad. My sense is the most important part of the day, in the context of a work day, most important part of the moment of the day for a dad is the way that he comes home and greets the kids and the wife.
Mm-hmm. Well, very poignant.
Yeah.
It's been said that, or I think most men would agree that they would have rather had an hour of potent, full connection and presence and full engagement with their dad than 8 hours of him just being around the house, but like
not really there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And it's different with the mothers. Like, I think there is a quality where with the attachment style, where the kids need to go back to the secure base, just like a cell phone, you go back to the docking station and recharge. Mm-hmm. If you notice this, the more secure the attachment, the kid can go explore further, but they still want to periodically come back.
Close proximity,
snuggle, nuzzle on the leg, and this is healthy bonding and attachment. But with the father, this is evolutionary in tribes.
Sure, yeah.
But with the father, when he's gone out to the hunt, it's the way that he comes back and greets that's
so awesome.
That gives the kid and the wife that real strong connection and presence.
That is a nugget right there. That 2 minutes
Yeah.
is so awesome.
Yeah.
That is the essence of the entire podcast. If you don't get anything else out of it,
Right.
The idea that when you come home, when you haven't seen your children or your wife or significant other, the way that you greet them is so crucial, and that is just awesome. Thank you. That is a really, really good point.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. So my mother, who wrote books on the topic of relationships, one of her books was called The 10-Second Kiss, and that's exactly what that was about. Whether it was the goodbye or the hello, but it's that stopping, making the connection, and kissing for 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. And that is amazing, how much that has an effect on the person doing, wow. That was meaningful right there.
Right.
Here's the challenge, though. Many guys, let's say they've had a great day, really killed it at work. They come home, they might be a little tense in their body. They might be a little stressed, might be a little tired. Maybe they're introverted. But overall, many of us need just a little bit of time to kind of decompress.
Yes. Yeah.
But the moment we walk in the door is when our wife and children are most checking, do they love me? Does he love me?
Yeah.
Via the quality of our presence and the way they greet.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to decompress before you get into the house.
Totally.
Sit out down the street in your car and meditate for 5 minutes.
I've done that a few times where I got in my car and just sat in the car for a little bit before I walked in because I needed to decompress, and I'm a very solitary person. A lot of my activities revolve around me because I'm self-centered, but also
You're still a
because
dude.
I was still a dude. Also, and I grew up with a lot of siblings, so I didn't really have to engage with a lot of people, so I was just kind of on my own a lot. And so for me, when people are rushing at me the minute I walk in the door, it was kind of weird for a second. I don't go, hey, get away from me. I'm more oh yeah. But in my head, I'm going, I would like you to not talk for a few minutes, just so I can just chill out for a minute. So, I either do that or run to the bathroom.
So a couple strategies that I've really found successful with clients is Some walk around the block or do some kind of movement.
Mm.
Some go to the gym after work,
Yeah.
and that changes their state. Have you guys noticed just taking off your clothes or taking a shower and changing clothes? It's like the Clark Kent to the Superman to Clark Kent.
Or Mr.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I think the Superman one's a little better. Mr. Rogers.
There's
But
Rogers,
you're both
yeah.
right, yeah. No,
But that's
interesting. I didn't
kind of
think
like
that.
changing. It's changing the state, changing
Yeah.
like leaving the day behind you.
Yeah.
And other guys, depending on the arrangement of your house, sometimes they'll have a back entrance and they can go in and shower, sit in the recliner in their little home office or whatever for like 5 minutes to decompress. But when they go out,
They're there.
they're full power.
Yep.
Right, yeah.
And that's, obviously good to discuss that with your significant other and your children even. And in fact, one of the guys in the meetup, that's exactly what he does, is he says the children and the wife know when he gets home, he has 10 minutes, it's his time, exactly that, decompresses, changes, and then when he comes out, he's, like you said, full on, 100% engaged, and that works.
Clark Kent.
Yeah.
He's a dad. He's a dude.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. This is just awesome information. Once again, if anybody needs to get a hold of Johnny, is interested in some of the work that he's doing, you're based here in San Diego, but you can do you can do it via phone or anything like that, so you can
Skype,
help people.
whatever.
Yeah, Skype. JohnnyBlackburn.net. We'll be sure to put the link on the page of the podcast episode. Any other last tips or practical things that you can think of? The coming home is awesome. Some of the things I'm just kind of reviewing so I can remember. I'm going to have to write. I'm writing all these down anyways. The other is just making sure whether it's the physical presence of feeling it, and then also the connection, like you said. You said a lot about breath. Can you talk a little bit about even that part? Meditation, breath, the idea that, is it breathing a couple times really deep before you go into a situation to make sure that you're present? Like, what are some of the breathing things you can talk about?
Absolutely. And in relation to that, I want to also talk about attunement.
Okay.
One of the things that you mentioned with, kind of kneeling down and getting down to your child's level, like, there's a quality of, how do we want to, let's see if we can translate this into another, like attunement, like the way that musical instruments, like I'm not a musician, but, when I see musicians warming up, like they're basically tuning their instruments and making sure they sound in resonance with each other.
Yeah.
And so, if you think about the human body kind of also as an instrument, and we're playing a certain song, and then like our son or our wife is also playing another certain song. So there's a way, part of the connection is that in a way it's kind of a dance, that we kind of check out their state of like how they're doing.
Mm.
And so when I heard you say getting down to your, like kneeling down, getting to your son's level, like this is essentially that.
Okay.
So to do this in a practical way, you would take a breath, right? And just as if you were like a boxer or a martial artist, and you would kind of like, you just sense out your opponent, like, are they tired? How are their strength? Like, what's their state? You're doing the same thing with your son, and like, you're just, and a lot of times if we're a little amped up from work, then using our breath can help to change our radio station so it's more attuned to their station.
Mm.
Got it.
Interesting, yeah.
So are they in
What
a
makes you
playful-
pause,
Totally.
right? That's the breath makes you pause
Yeah.
to then think about that state.
And so think about it like getting their world. So attunement is getting their world at the sensing level.
Mm. Makes sense.
Deep, but totally true.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you guys will know, like you'll know when your son's or your daughter's in a really playful mood,
Mhm.
right? And then they're a lot more open and receptive to
Yeah.
things. And you can feel if they're resistant. So if they're resistant, like, okay, how do I want to meet that?
Right. Like if they had a bad day or something. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
One more piece to the attunement with our partners. I think again the women time and time again say the thing that they want most from men is their presence. And in a workshop we do men and women, and we had them in dyads across from each other, and we did all different exercises, and we were playing with pity, empathy, and silent but like attuned listening.
Okay.
And so the pity would, like, the woman would, share something, story or something she was feeling, and then the guy would be like, oh, that's too bad, but you just need to get over that, or like,
That works.
oh, you poor thing, me, wow, this doesn't that, And I mean, someone would get pissed.
Yeah.
Some of them thought it was funny because it was a game, but some actually really got
Oh
pissed.
yeah.
So we all know from
Especially if they're a couple.
real
Yeah.
experience that doesn't work, right?
Right, yeah.
And then empathy is kind of like naming at the mental level, imagining what somebody else is feeling or experiencing. So like, wow, I'm imagining you'd be disappointed that happened. And this, just naming that and kind of like that somebody else gets our world is really kind of soothing. But what we noticed the women want first was the man to just listen.
Yeah.
And breathe and hold eye contact.
Don't
So-
say anything.
In simple man terms, how do we do that? Okay, we just listen, you feel your feet on the ground, don't say anything, you just listen, you make eye contact, you breathe. And this is the first step. And then you're attuning to when she changes her state, and with a certain amount of presence, this can help somebody kind of like feel and release what they're feeling.
Rather than you trying to give them advice.
Only if they ask.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a theme here. We talk about
Yeah,
that.
it is a motif.
So anyway, yeah,
That's awesome.
Those are a couple things we can try.
That is awesome. And you know what? I mean, this is such practical advice that we can really actually use. We talk about car seats and diapers and all this stuff. I mean, which is great. It's great. But this is the kind of stuff that sticks with you forever.
Yeah.
It's not just a phase that you're going through.
Right.
Like, this is stuff that really has an impact on whatever phase of your life. And no matter what you're a dad, a dude, a woman,
Whatever
doesn't
kind of
matter.
relationship you have.
Yeah, it's really, really helpful. So, Johnny, I mean, I just want to thank you. It's been very insightful, very helpful. Once again, johnnyblackburn.net. We'll put the link up there on the website.
You on Twitter? No? Okay, just website.
Yeah, I mean, they can find out the different presents. You are on
Yeah.
Facebook, but so
Yeah.
they can find out the different links from there. And, if you guys have any questions, need some assistance, whether that's some coaching or help, I can vouch for him for sure that, Johnny, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
he lives what he's talking about,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things too. There's a lot of people, I just will say, that they're not necessarily doing what they say. They may say or preach something, but I can attest to you living that and embodying exactly what you're talking about. So he looked at me when I was talking. See, I told him he's present. So anything else?
4 summary takeaways.
Okay.
At work, take movement breaks. So meaning find how much time you can work without you getting stiffer, so that at the end of the day you're still vital, and this also helps with productivity throughout your day. So maybe you work for 30 to 45, 50 minutes, and then you got up and go take a walk or get some water and come back down. So number 1 is movement breaks. Number 2 is the state change, the Superman to Clark Kent when you come home. Make sure you in some way decompress or are resourced so you can really greet your wife and kids with the fullness of how much you do love and care about.
Right.
The third thing was attunement, and we talked about that, like the metaphor of the radio stations and really kind of getting their world by
Take a
sensing
breath.
what they're feeling. Yeah. And then the fourth thing was listening. This goes a long way with the part. I'm sure you've talked about this before.
Yeah, we've been.
Podcasts. But in a really practical sense. So when your partner's talking, like feel your feet on the ground and put your attention on your own breath and make eye contact with them.
That is awesome.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Very
Alan,
actionable,
you're going to
very
practice
useful.
all these things?
I'm going to do them right now.
I'm going to go home and do that. Oh, my kids are asleep. It's too late.
But that's perfect time to decompress.
I can do it tomorrow. Yeah, so with that, just want to say, Johnny, thank you. Alan, thank you.
Thank you.
And we will see you guys next week.
See you next week.